Hi, welcome to Found with Trish and Sherri. After years of swapping our experiences back and forth, we're excited to bring you into the conversation.
Today we have a special guest and author of two children's books, Becky Cortesi-Caruso. The first book is Chasing Charlie, and her follow-up was Beautifully Biracial. Hi, Becky. You
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you
want to
for
tell us a
being
little bit
here.
about yourself?
Sure. I have been in public education going on 25 years, spent 14 years of my career as a school social worker, working with elementary, middle, and high school students. And then the last, decade, I've been a state approved director of special education. Um,
And what led you to write the two books that you have written, the two children's books?
I have always wanted to write. I feel that writing is cathartic and yet therapeutic. So I was always a writer, whether it was working on my thesis when I was going through grad schools. And I found that as a family, adopted Charleigh, being biracial, raising her in I would say in a middle to an affluent socioeconomic community was challenging. I found myself on the other side of the table in terms of trying to find hope for myself in raising a biracial young girl, as Charleigh was at the time of writing, and currently she's 13. But the struggles were real, and no matter my background as a school social worker or as a therapist, I found myself as a mom feeling quite alone in the challenges of trying to raise this little girl to love who she is inside and out when she truly didn't feel accepted in the community in which we continue to raise her. I decided to write, and both stories came to fruition. And I will tell you guys, no matter what we do in our lives, no matter the money we make, the high profile positions we have, your children don't care about any of it. One of my greatest accomplishments was not just being a mother, but adopting and yet telling that story. We had a lot of tears when that book came out.
How so?
Just seeing it, just seeing how challenging it was to create it, from the words to, I remember, being told, like, okay, we got to condense what you're writing, right? Because we have to make certain it's a children's book and a certain target population can read it and understand it. So it was kind of letting go of that control that I'm so used to having in my career and as a mother. And trusting the process. Like I always say in special ed to my parents, trust the process. It's no different than being an author.
And what has been sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Trish.
What has been some of the feedback that you've gotten from that first book?
Chasing
Charlie.
Yeah. So Chasing Charlie made its way into Australia. And
oh, really?
Yes. And in parts of Europe. And people have written to me just saying how courageous I was to tell that story about our open adoption. Some of the feedback has been interesting. People will say, hey, do you mind talking about this? Right. And I said, well, yes, our story is an open book, but I want it to be because I promote open adoption. For some families, it's not feasible, and I respect that. But for the people that reached out, a lot of the questions were, did you fear the unknown of when Charleigh gets older? Is that going to confuse her that she has this other family? And I said, I think it depends, right? I believe, as a former social worker and therapist, I believe in honesty, right? And living with a sense of integrity. And I hope that my children see that. And Charleigh sees that. And there was never, ever any intimidation about, this is your mama Lisa and I'm mom. And so that's what I'm most proud of, is truly telling that story to people and saying, but this is our story, right? You can create your story within your constraints of your family. But our story has been successful because of the honesty and the openness. Her bio mom is 10 years younger than me. Part of Chasing Charlie, if you see the illustrations, a dear high school friend created them for me. And I was just talking to somebody the other day. Those illustrations, they're real pictures of our families together. So I have birthday parties and coming to sleep over, and her bio brother and her interacting and just loving on one another. I mean, those are the greatest, most priceless memories of my entire life.
So I'm intrigued because I don't know your story.
Yeah.
So, and Trish and I were both closed adoptions from 1969, and we have since found our biological families. But I am intrigued at open adoptions, and I would love to hear the beginnings of that story.
Oh, certainly, certainly. So I will be truly honest with all of you. My heart of a social worker has always been that. I knew I wanted to adopt, honestly, well before I ever considered having biological children. A lot of people don't know that about me. I'm so blessed that I have blended. I have adoption and I have biological children. I don't, I would say I feel it's a calling. I don't know how to explain it other than it was a calling that I always knew I wanted to adopt. If I had it my way, I always tell people I would have adopted all over the world. But realistically, being a working mom and having the position I have, I'm blessed to have the three I have. I originally was considering fostering to adopt through DCFS. After many years of conversation with my husband, and working the system, I worked a lot of hard cases. My husband decided for us, and I was in agreement that we would start our family to see if we could have children, and we did. We had my daughter Cameron, and then we had Carson, and then I just really said to him, I said, "Do you remember the pact we made years ago, a decade ago?" I had three rules, you can say, ladies. The first one was if he was going to marry me, I needed to keep my father's last name. And the reason for that is my dad died when I was young, and it was the first thing he gave me when I entered into the world, and it was the last thing he left me. And I could not part with it. People do in our society make these preconceived notions about my last name. I've had a lot of questions about, are your kids hyphenated? And I said no. So I always explain the story why I'm hyphenated. Secondly, if our marriage, like many marriages, struggle, I'm a big proponent of therapy. And if ever we needed that, would he consider that? And last but not least is I wanted to adopt. And I would have never married somebody that didn't believe in adoption. So that's what kind of led us to this amazing adoption story and journey of Charleigh.
Okay, so you're married and you're hyphenated,
Yeah.
and you have a daughter and you have a son, and then you say, "Hey, do you remember that thing we talked about 10 years ago?" And he says,
"Oh, I remember. You're relentless, Becky." Yeah. Yeah.
and then the next day you were on a list to foster.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. I wish it wasn't that easy. So I had a colleague who was a guidance counselor that adopted from Angel Adoption. They were in Cary, Illinois, not too far from where we live. And I started asking a lot of questions about the process because they had adopted their daughter. And we went back and forth. Angel was the marketing, like they were going to market us. And so Mike and I went a few times, if anybody knows my husband, he is a very just patient, but I'm very like, let's just do it. I do think about things, but Mike is just like, wait, hold your horses. And I'm just like, no, like we're doing this. But I had to respect where he was, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted this my entire life, and Mike's comes from a highly conservative family. So basically we went to visit Angel. I adore these women. They opened it up. There were two mothers that adopted sibling groups, which I didn't realize how common that is. Mm-hmm. But they created Angel. And so, they were so patient with us. We asked a ton of questions. And my final question, because I was very much on the fence about who would want us as a family. Like, we have 2 bio kids. Who's really going to want us? And, and then Mike was asking, like, what's the wait? Like, how long do we have to wait? And this, there's a reason why I'm telling this story. So the ladies looked at me and they said, Becky, you're overthinking it. Don't be so analytical. People, when we market you all over the nation, they look at your family and they say, this is a beautiful family. They have it all. We want our baby to be placed in a home like this. They're not thinking about, they have 2 bio kids, or, is this going to be their last kid? Or they're not thinking like that. They're looking at, are you the all-American family that could financially and emotionally and physically support our baby? And so we ended up signing with them. They were the most wonderful organization. I promote them all the time. They actually had Charleigh back to sign books years ago. Trish, I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't. That's interesting.
I took her up to their office and she signed a bunch of copies and they gave them out to new families that adopted. Yeah.
She was like star for a day.
She was a superstar.
Now, how did she react to the book coming out?
Well, she was younger, but I think it was super sweet. To this day, she'll be like, am I famous? And I'm like, well, you're not like famous, right? Because every year up until 5th grade, I came in and we read the book together. The 5th year that we read the book, she chose not to read it, which I respected. So I read it to her 5th grade class and it was heartbreaking. Beautifully Biracial, it's a tough story, but it needed to be told. And she was crying. And I cried because I was like, I'm thinking about the social, emotional, is this good? But I think she was a little overwhelmed, to hear her story again. Mm-hmm. But I want to get back. We can talk about that later. I want to get back though. So we were marketed 1 year. We had the best Lutheran Social Services. They licensed us our attorney was a biracial attorney from Chicago, remarkable. Cook County, the court system. I mean, it was the most amazing experience of our family's lives, not just Mike and I. When we got into court, I was intimidated by the judge because she asked my kids to come into court. Now you have to remember, my children were only 3 and 8, 3 and 9, and she interviewed them.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was cute. It was
what does she ask?
What's your name? How old are you? What do you think about this? Are you excited about your new baby sister? And to this day, when that picture pops up on my history on Facebook, because I'm a big Facebook and Instagram, because that's when we post, right? It's a way of Charleigh's family, wherever they are. A lot of her family's in Milwaukee and North Carolina. They can see her. They're seeing her being raised, because we only really see them once a year.
That's really interesting to think
of. Yeah, but so when we finalized the adoption, it was just beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. We had her baptized at the church that I grew up in, got married in, and Lisa and her family came.
Her birth mother.
Yes, and her aunts and her cousins. They spent.
So it's a very open adoption.
Yeah, they spent the night. They all kind of hunkered into my home and spent the night with us. And it was interesting because my Charleigh is Charleigh, and there was a Charlotte. And I kept telling the pastor, or I think it was a deacon, I was like, okay, she's Charleigh Channing. So and he goes, oh my gosh. But it was really funny because it was like a tongue twister when he was trying to say Charleigh Channing. But the most beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. He asked Lisa to stand up as he was just explaining everything going on, and he blessed her. And he blessed our family. And I mean, I'll tell you, I don't think we were all in tears. You couldn't have asked for like a more beautiful moment than what happened in that church with just two families.
So was Charleigh a newborn when
Mhm.
she came to your family?
Yeah, I actually got to help deliver her.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah. I mean,
That's
I
amazing.
didn't plan for that, but yeah.
And so you've waited a year with the adoption agency and you get notified that a birth mother has selected you?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how
And
did that feel after a year? Were you like, because Trisha's adoption took 5 years.
yes, I
Um,
know.
yes. So
Yeah.
after a year, you're like, phew, finally, or oh my gosh, it's fast. What were you thinking?
No, I mean, like I said, as I age, I'm a more patient person. But there were countless days in my life where I would just sit and wait for that phone to ring, or I would call upon my guidance counselor friends to say, this is whirlwind, and I'm like going through this roller coaster of emotions, and is this ever going to happen?
Mhm.
Um, and so the wait was hard. To me, it felt like an eternity.
Mhm.
But when the agency called and said, you have a match, I was like, wow. I mean, so Lisa called. I didn't realize Lisa had Adrian, who's 18 months older than Charleigh. And yeah, she called and she was like, hey, just want to let you know the baby is biracial. How do you feel? And I was like, you know, this is a blessing. Like, this is an absolute blessing from God that you found us and that you're interested in us. Just tell us where and when. Um, I don't recall like the dates or anything, but within a few weeks, we met her in Milwaukee. I'll never forget it. She was, running with little Adrian in the stroller. We met at McDonald's and we talked for hours. And then before you know it, she was delivering. Like it just happened so quick. Um, but I remember the call and she's like, I need a favor from you and Mike. And I said, yeah, well, yeah, anything. What do you need? She goes, I need you guys to take care of Adrian as I'm having the baby. Nobody knew about her being pregnant. Not
Oh.
even her mom, who shortly died, I believe, after Charleigh was born. Um,
Oh, wow.
I got to tell you guys, like, I really struggled. Like, I had this grief that is very difficult to explain. I felt like I was grieving for her. I felt guilty because here is this woman who is living home to home to home, just trying to survive with Adrian. And then here's us, right? Possibly adopting her daughter. And
Mhm.
I had a hard time with it because, I couldn't tell you the amount of cases I've worked on. But to be part of this world now, I did a lot of soul searching, because I wanted to make certain we were making the right decision, but that Lisa was making the right decision for Lisa and Adrian. And I said, absolutely. So we spent the whole weekend taking care of Adrian. I almost missed the birth because I was trying to help my husband put Adrian to sleep, but Adrian was too busy double fisting Oreo cookies out of his bag. I was like, why are you feeding him Oreo cookies? I mean, I could go on and on about the relationship with Mike and Adrian. So yeah, I made it in time for the birth. I got to tell you, I feel like I was more nervous for this than just having my bio kids. Like Lisa at one point said, sit down, because she didn't get any drugs. I'm like, are you
Yeah.
sure
Oh,
about
wow.
this? And she's like, sit down, just sit down. Because I was like, what do you want me to do? And she's like, I just need you to sit. We laugh, to this day we laugh because I was like, I was so annoying, wasn't I? She goes, oh, beyond annoying. And then I spent, I think we were there a week or two. Well, we were there a while, but in the hospital, Mike left us alone to just hang out as girls. And I remember asking, it was probably one of the last nights I got pizza, I brought it back. And I remember asking her, can I ask you a question? She's like, Becky, you can ask me anything. Because there's that fine line. You're still, we felt like we knew each other forever, but there's a fine line.
It's a very personal situation.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So I said, why us? Out of all the people in the nation, why us? I'm telling you, you remember the story I told you about Angel. She goes, I looked at your family and you were the all-American family, beautiful, successful. I knew that you could give my baby the world and then some. And then we just cried.
Well, I love that it seems like you have become just a whole family. It's more of it does seem like your experience with an open adoption has been very positive.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was so, I can't think of the word, just fluid, seamless.
That's great. Now, you said you had some challenges. When did the challenges begin, and what types of challenges did you have?
So when Charleigh was about 5, you're so excited when you send your 5-year-old to school. You got the bus, you got friends, you have a whole new world that opens up for a 5-year-old. Charleigh, midway through, a couple weeks into the year, she was acting different, right? And I wasn't sure what was going on. And Charleigh is a very, very quiet little girl. And one day she loved her bath. So you make the bubble bath, she's in the bath. And I noticed, she's like, do you have a towel? And I said, well, of course, what do you need it for? And I'm going to scrub my skin. I need to scrub my skin. And I said, babe, why do you have to scrub your skin? It's not like you were playing in dirt or, she goes, Mommy, I'm going to scrub my skin. I want to look like you and Daddy. This was 5 years old. And I just was stunned. And I said, well, what do you mean you want to look like Daddy and I? And she goes, I want to be your color skin. I want to be, she said white. She said, I just want to be your skin. And I will tell you guys, I realized when I entered into this biracial adoption, that I was going to need to educate myself. Right. And I think my background, I'm urban education. So I thought, I'm confident about this. My background will help support me in raising this beautifully biracial little girl. Not at 5, though. It was devastating. I turned around because I did not want her to see me cry. I turned around and I sobbed. And then I threw some water on my face. I was trying to make it look like I didn't cry. And here's my daughter scrubbing her skin. Just scrubbing. And then I cried for a solid couple of months every night to sleep because I didn't know what to do at that point. So the educator in me immediately called the school and said, I want a meeting. And I will be very honest and absolutely transparent. I went in. I provided them a book that was culturally sensitive, culturally relevant. And I said, if you guys do not, I asked a few questions. Like, number one, what kind of cultural awareness training do your staff go through? How about the students? What kind of curriculum's in place? And, it was a new principal, not a new assistant principal. Like, I had known her. I adored her. She was a former social worker. And basically they said, well, we have trainings once in a while for our staff. And I said, okay, could you talk to me about that? What does that look like? And they said, well, we have just a trainer that talks about culture in general. And I said, but I'm not talking about culture in general. I'm talking about cultural awareness, recognizing the importance of terminology, sensitivity, acceptance. And so they said, well, we have brought somebody in, right? And I was trying to cut the principal some slack because she was new to the district. but she was just evasive. So I said, okay, do you mind me asking what color was the person that did the training? And she just kind of looked at me, and I said, what color was the person? I asked again. She said, well, they were white. And I just laughed. And I said, with all due respect, I am highly educated, raising this beautiful girl who's biracial. And I would never even come into a school district and talk about cultural sensitivity because I'm not an expert. Now, could I come in and talk about experiences raising my daughter in this very, very narrow-minded conservative town, and what statements and bullying and frankly discrimination has done to her? Yes, I could very well talk about that and have a courageous conversation, but you're really not providing any source of support. So I gave her the book. I said, thank you. And then I walked away and wrote the longest email probably that I've ever written. There's some other things I've done that are highly confidential I can't talk about. But I hope change has been made. If not for my daughter, then the minorities that come through our town.
Now, what are some of the, you were talking about, if you don't mind me telling me, and if you do, I understand.
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that you have found to be struggles, maybe not only with your daughter, but biracial kids in general? What have you found, discovered?
What I've learned, and it's been a learning curve, I have learned that there's discrimination amongst Black people. There's a such thing called colorism. I'm not white enough. I'm not part of a community that I so want to be because of my color. Charleigh struggles to fit into the white community. She struggles to fit into the Black community. And you know, I can't even say she is accepted with the biracial community. I can't fairly say that because we are such a white community. I will tell you when the little girl on the bus, what prompted all of it was a little girl on the bus saying, I don't like Black people. I just don't. And she looked at Charleigh and she's like, I just don't. I don't like you. I don't like Black people. And could you imagine a 5-year-old hearing that, but being smart enough then to come home and start scrubbing her skin? And Charleigh has told me.
It makes you wonder if that child didn't hear that at home.
Yeah.
And then you're fighting it. That's a bigger monster. Yes.
Yeah. Ironically, that family lived where my mom lives and no longer does. And I don't fault that child. I know more about that child and in her own diverse learning needs. I will never, place blame on a 9-year-old child. But it was taxing, I think, on all of us, including Charleigh, to just figure out, where do I fit in? We only had one Black child from a very affluent family that lived in the community. And I said, what about her? What about go play? And she's like, Mommy, I don't. She's darker than me. This is my daughter now saying this. And it was, you guys, it was so absolutely heart-wrenching, because I have prided myself, Mike and I have prided ourselves at, you love people for who they are. You see people. You understand their struggles to the best of your ability. And if you don't, you seek guidance into what is your life like. That is, Mike and I are servant people. We serve students and family and underprivileged people. That was tough. I remember that day like nothing. We were in Wisconsin. I pulled over. I called her mom and I said, Lisa, I need help. And she goes, what happened? And I said, this is what happened. And she goes, okay. And I said, I need a picture of Charleigh's father. And she goes, okay, done. So she texted me the picture. I showed Charleigh. I said, and mind you, she's only 5, I think it was 5 or 6. And I said, honey, this is your dad. And he's Black. And I said, and we don't treat people poorly because of the color of their skin. Because that little girl that you didn't want to play with, look at your father. It was the same color. And it really bothered me. It really bothered me because how do you teach that when you're raising this biracial girl who's being discriminated, harassed, bullied? How do you teach that? Like, how do you say, like, we're not going to be those people that don't like people based on the color of their skin? That's not who we are.
Well, I know one thing with the international adoptees that has been a very important part of it, at least during the period that we were adopting internationally, was to try and make sure that you had access to all different types of people, and especially reflections of Chinese people. For if you had a Chinese adoptee, Korean adoptee, having Korean people, having access to that culture, having something along the lines in that community, so they can gain a better sense of themselves and see that reflected. Also, to have families that look like them, and Sherri and I've talked about this before, within support groups. Books that had those themes, so that it was just a normal part of life, and to give them some pride in that. Is that something you think that you would do differently now that you know, or that you would suggest to people who are looking to do either transracial or biracial adoption?
Yes. So if I could do things differently, I would have probably moved to a more diverse community. My biggest regret, I think, of my entire life raising her. We were already in the process of moving. We moved back to the town I was raised in. I moved back to help out my mom. And we had conversations about moving. However, we were pretty settled. I will tell you, I belong to a biracial Facebook group because I've been seeking for probably the last 7 to 8 years. I've been trying to find some type of biracial group, not even biracial adoptees, right? Because that could be trans, just biracial group in general. And I've not found anything. I've had very kind people say, well, maybe we could come across the states and create something for all of our biracial kids. But a lot of the kids were younger. They weren't her age. I've reached out to a few churches.
Were you not able to find that support group on social media?
No. So I reached out to the churches. She belongs to a church group down the street. But it's not diverse. It's, that's been a struggle.
Was that one of the things that you wanted to do with releasing your 2 books, is to make that more accessible and something for kids to look at that would be supportive of them, see themselves reflected as representation?
Yes. I wanted, just not just for biracial, right? I wanted people of all cultures, all nationalities to just read her story and realize the impact that we all have when it comes to being culturally sensitive and responsive. In my job, there are points in my job where I've had to deal with like harassment, discrimination, bullying. And I always have to explain to students, there's what's called the bystander. Like, just because you may not have been the person bullying, you're watching, and you play an important part and an important role in what is going on in the culture of your school. So it's educating all people. But when I wrote that story, my vision was quite clear, and that was to empower my daughter to love who she is inside and out,
Mhm,
regardless of what anybody tells her. To me,
mhm,
it was my therapy for me to write it to one day hope that she will believe it.
mhm,
And it's a journey. I mean, it's a journey.
Well, and that's a
mhm.
great message for all kids.
Mm-hmm.
I always say if we were all alike, it'd be very, very boring.
Well, and
Well,
she,
one of the things I hear being said is, and I'm an educator as well. This is my 32nd year teaching. And I've
oh,
taught in elementary school for 21 years, and the last however many years since 2015, I've been in a high school that is an inner city high school. So I hear some of the same threads of what you've mentioned in my own professional experience. And I also happen to have a 20-year-old daughter with Down syndrome.
oh
Now
wow.
we
You know,
live
I'm
in a yes, so we live in a big city in Florida, and we have a group called the Down Syndrome Foundation of Florida, and so my daughter's birth came with a large built-in group of support, which is huge. But I hear you saying that you were in a different situation, similar to the place where Trish and I grew up, which is a small conservative town in North Florida that was primarily black and white, and still is, I want to say, but I don't live there now. Um, one of the things that I think growing up in a small town and then leaving home and moving in different places and meeting different people was helpful to me to expanding the way I think, and I call myself radically inclusive.
yeah.
But the other thing that really hit me that made me empathize with people, because I think a lot of what we're talking about is a lack of empathy and understanding of other people. And reading is actually what has helped me to put myself in all these different people's shoes, and reading and education has become a test skill. It's tested and the writing prompts, and it's so controlled that the love of reading, I think, is a struggle now for a lot of young people. And it's that empathy that's lacking in our cultures. I think it's perfect, though, that you're coming with these situations that you've had arise, and you've helped to solve that by writing books that people will read. It seems to be the perfect answer there, you
I
know.
think, um, when we think about Charlie's story, um, I just wish, and I will wish forever that no child will ever go through what she's gone through.
Mhm,
Um, I also wish I want so badly to raise awareness. Um, and I think, as I near the end of my career, right, part of my next step is to go back to being a therapist and being a social
mhm.
worker. Um, because I don't think the work is done in telling her
No,
story.
no.
Um, I think the greatest experience of my entire life was the day she read that book. Charlie does not like to read, as you know. She struggles,
Mhm,
and I feel like I might be sounding like a hypocrite, right? But public education, we put children in boxes, um, and some kids don't fit in that box. And so we as advocates and parents have to figure out ways um, to help identify certain stressors and challenges to the public system to say, my child does not learn like that. I will tell you my biggest obstacle is a nice word to put it, is bringing awareness back to the public school to say, number one, my daughter doesn't like to read, right? She struggles. Acknowledge that. But number two, please tell me, um, I want to know the diversity within your curriculum. That's all. I want to know what is going on in terms of, number one, why my daughter doesn't like to read. Because you know what I learned 2 years ago? when I said, honey, why don't you like to read? And this was an aha moment, a moment that I thought, Becky, how didn't you see this? Right? But when you're so close to a situation that causes so much stress, you lose sight of what's sitting in front of you. She says, Mom, I don't like to read. Yes, it's hard. But I don't like to read. I don't identify with any of the characters. And I really was hard on myself because I said, how did I not see this? I'm so specialized in the world of special ed and the highest up you can go. And I didn't even see it in my own kid. I was so hyper focused on her struggles that I didn't see that this little, well, she's a big girl now. But I didn't see that of course you don't want to read. How do you identify? So I brought that to the school district's attention. And I'll be happy to tell you, this year she's reading Frederick Douglass, and like on vacation, she was telling all of us about Frederick Douglass. And I've taken her so many times to the bookstore to get books of children that look like her, but she just struggles with reading. She just, and I'm not a person that's going to push it. Like when the time is right, you will read.
Yes.
But yeah, raising a biracial young girl has been the most rewarding and yet challenging role of my entire life.
Now, I've heard you say her biological mother is very involved. Does she have any contact with her biological father?
No, she doesn't. When she was born, we told Mom, we said, anytime he wants to see her or meet her, open door. Her mom is very protective over us. So, we had them up to our place in Wisconsin years ago. The whole family came, and it was so much fun. And we had a long talk. And I said, did you ever have the talk with the dad? And she goes, Becky, I did. And I said, if you ever want to meet her, they won't come to Milwaukee. You will come to them. And she said, I don't want to disappoint Charlie. He's literally 10 minutes from her brother and doesn't see him. So why would we do that? And I said, but we would come up to see him. And she goes, no, you won't. And so I respect her. I respect, I respect where she came from on that. But yeah, Charlie recently, found him on Facebook, asked, could I friend him? And I said, totally your call. You're 13 and a half. You want to friend him. She did. And then that night I was like, did he friend you back? Did you talk? And she's like, no, he didn't. And then she's like, I'm going to unfriend or cancel it. And I said, well, it's your choice, and I said, maybe you should call Mama Lisa and you should talk this over with her, before you just cancel it. She goes, yeah. She goes, I'm fine, Mom. I'm fine. So she's never met him. And he has a very large family. I'm sure. I think Charlie might have 10 plus siblings on the father's side. And she has 3 on the mom's side that we all know.
Well,
so
one thing you know is it'll
brother,
change. You just never know through your life what you decide to do or how you feel about it can always change. Sherri and I are proof of that.
Yes, I know you are. I believe in self-determination. I believe I've raised my girls, I have a boy. I have raised my girls to be highly independent and determined and embrace their individuality. And sometimes it backfires on me.
Yes, my daughter's as strong-willed as I am.
So
Heaven help your husband.
And Charlie has a wonderful relationship with her father. I mean, I'm the one she comes to and talks to. But she knows when she wants something, she, calls Dad. And they went to Dollar Tree when I was gone.
She's got it figured out, huh?
He's pretty smart.
So she does see her biological brother, and he is a full brother? Same
Yes,
parents.
it's same
Okay.
parents. And then she has
Does
two
he
halves.
see does he see the father? No. And
No,
then
not Priscilla.
how often does she get to see her biological brother?
So for the first, oh gosh, okay, so she's 13. I would say for the first decade, um, maybe a few times a year, but they moved. So they
Okay.
moved to North Carolina. Gosh, I want to say 3 years ago, four maybe. Um, so we don't see them much, but they text, they call, they FaceTime. They play sometimes. I think the one day she was on with the older brother playing Roblox or something. So when they come up in the summer, we'll go up. It just depends. It depends when Lisa can come up. We were trying to get together. I was going to fly out to North Carolina probably about 4 or 5 months ago, but she's back in school. And so it was really hard to put her school schedule, her work schedule, my schedule, Charlie's schedule together so we could kind of, reunite with the family. So we don't see them as much as we did probably, I would tell you, like the first 9 years, 10 years.
You know, growing up, I didn't find my biological mother until I was 48. And so for 48 years, I had no access to my siblings. I had no access to my birth mother. I had no access to medical, to all of those things. I'm trying to put myself in Charlie's shoes, just knowing that she's had access to all of that information, and that, she's had, like you said, Mama Lisa and Mama, and just access to people who love her so much that uh, she's the center of their world and has everything. That's amazing.
You
That's
know,
amazing to me as an adopted person.
I people say the craziest things, and good intent, good intent.
Mhm.
Like the first couple weeks I had her, I was standing in line at Kohl's with her, and she's such a beautiful baby. People really weren't sure if she was black and white,
Right.
Hispanic and white, Asian and white. People weren't sure. Like my family was like, "No, she's Asian." I'm like, I no, she's not Asian. She's black and white. Like, I think I know. Um,
Right.
one lady, minding my business, waiting to check out. Was one lady says to me, "Oh my gosh, like, could you not have your own children?" And thank God for my background as a social worker, because
Right.
I politely looked at her and I was like, "No, I have two bio children," and she just looked at me.
Mhm.
You got that awkward silence, but I was like, "What in God's name? Like, what would possess you to ask me that?"
Mhm.
And then another one. It's like and I'm sure you guys have been. I'm sure this has been said to you. Charlie is one lucky girl. Man, did she strike gold. And I just look at them and I'm like, no, no. We are the blessed. We are blessed. This whole family is blessed because she
Mhm.
completed this family. And I know, I know people mean well, but I'm an educator, and I can't just sit there and have people say that when I am blessed beyond. Like Charlie is all my children, they're gifts from God. And they are, people say, "What's your greatest accomplishment?" And I said, my children. No matter what I've done in my career, or my own struggles, raising these three beautiful kids to love each other. Now, mind you, it's sibling rivalry. Like, I'm not going to lie. Um, and Charlie goes through her ebb and flows of, "You're not my real brother," or "You're not my real mom," and I take it in stride. You know what? I'm your mother. I will love you regardless of what you say to me. People say, "Don't you hurt?" And I said, no. When you sign up for adoption, you have to realize there's good and there's bad. And when you're raising a biracial young girl who's trying to figure out her life, you're the one that's going to take the brunt of depression, anxiety, sadness. So that's what that's what I signed on for. But also many people don't realize that. I didn't realize when she was 5, I was signing on for this. But writing the books was the best thing I've ever done in my life. It was cathartic. It was emotional. I cried when I needed to cry. And then I just got back on the horse and rode it because I knew she was watching me. And that's what was important.
It's very important.
If your husband was here with us, would he have the same take on things or would he have a different spin on it?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, and it's complicated. My husband is a man of very few words. And I think because he knows my background, he's allowed me to take it on full throttle. In retrospect, I do wish I would have been more supported by him. And I've said that many times. Like sometimes I just need that support. My husband grew up in a very Italian, Polish family. There wasn't a lot of emotion spoken about. And I can say that. I grew up in an Italian family. We didn't really talk a lot about our emotions or how life events impact us. We don't have a lot of diversity in our family besides Charleigh. It was a lot of me educating both sides of the families together. I think my husband shows love by being there, being present, and buying her stuff, which doesn't always help. But they're best
That's his love language. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I remember saying one day, I know I'm pretty tough. I'm strong, but I'm tired. I'm tired dealing with the educational challenges of raising diverse learners. But I'm also tired of fighting a losing battle when it comes to raising my biracial daughter in this community. And he's like, okay, well, what more can you do? If you're exhausted and you're tired, what more can you do? And I just kept writing.
You could write a couple of books about it.
Yeah, you take a respite, then you get back at it. Yeah. I think there's something to the strong woman with the quiet man relationship also, because that's what my situation is. And I just do whatever I'm going to do. And he is supportive, but not necessarily as involved or as headstrong as I am about things. And sometimes I don't think they know when to step up or when they need us to step up. We're about to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary, and it seems like I have to say, okay, there you go. And I have to say, okay, I need you to step up here, So I think it's tricky for those men as well.
Yeah, he's not, he's not a guy that is very, I don't want to say like affectionate, right? Because he is in his own awkward way. But you have to remember, if you don't have intuition and that knowledge of going back into your own childhood and looking at the way you were raised, you could easily raise your children the way you were raised.
Right.
And I never wanted to do that.
Me either.
Yeah. And it's nothing, bad upon my mother. But I just, I have a big heart, and I believe empathy goes a long way. And that's just the way I raised my kids. I have a really interesting, this is a great story. When we were moving, we're doing so many different things. And my son was going to first grade, first or second. And they did this mystery. I don't know if you guys had it in your public schools, but mystery guest. And you have to tell the class 3 things about yourself, not your name. And one was, I'm an educator. There was 3. I'm an educator. We've adopted, so blended family adoption. And so before I walked in, the teacher stepped out and she's like, Becky, she's like, Carson never guessed it was you. And I'm a writer. I don't know if I was writing. Oh no, I wasn't writing. Carson didn't guess. And I was like,
And it's
oh,
your son?
yes. Yes. He's my son.
He's like, who's that? Who's this mystery?
Yeah, he did not know. And I can't remember the third, but it was pretty telling that like he should have guessed like me. So I walk in and he's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, surprise. And the best story was, and he told the teacher, he goes, Charlie's my sister. I would have, she's not she's adopted, but she's my sister through and through. And I got emotional because that's how we want to embrace our family. She's their sister.
The kids usually are the ones who get it right.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a really cool story. I was like shocked. And the teacher's like, kudos to you, the way you're raising these kids of yours, that you're one big happy family. You're one big extended happy family.
That's great.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. You've really given me a lot to think about.
I hope it's all good.
It is good. It's just a different way of thinking about adoption. I'm so used to the story from the 1960s, when everything was closed and we didn't have any access, and it's just so different.
I worked with a lot of adoptees from middle school to high school. I saw their struggles. Even before we adopted, I just always knew I wanted to be open. When we did the legal paperwork, which I was just looking through the other day, the social worker's like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. How often do you want Becky, Lisa to send you pictures? Do you want phone calls? Do you want letters? And Lisa and I were just looking at each other and I was like, what exactly is the purpose of this? And the social worker said, well, you're making a legal agreement, even though in the state of Illinois, Becky, you can just null and void it. You don't have, you can say, I'm going to send pictures once a month and not do anything. And I said, well, that's silly. Like,
yeah, why would I do that?
Right. And so I said, Lisa, I said to her, I'm like, do you want to do this? Because like, we're open. It's like, we're open. Like, you want to see her, you can see her. And she goes, well, no. And then the social worker just looked at us like she did not know what to do. She was just like, what, you don't want to do it? I'm like, well, why would we want to do it? Like, she can see her. She could call me next week and see her, which after the adoption was finalized, I went back up there and we spent some time together with the baby. So yeah, we didn't need that agreement because we kept our words.
See, I think that's one thing with the generational differences. And Sherri and I have talked a lot about this type thing, that the generational expectations from when our parents adopted, that you wanted your child to look like you so nobody would know.
Yes.
And you wanted them to, to be from a good family and this kind of thing. And so it was just a hidden. You really didn't want anybody to know that your child was adopted. And now it's like, who cares? It doesn't matter. Families are different, all kinds of different families, different everything.
Yeah.
And I think having a much more open mind to having the different families, to having contact. I don't think there are as many adoptive mothers who feel as threatened by the birth parents as it probably was in generations past. I have several friends and people that I've known working and interviewed who have told me directly that, it was a big fear of their parents that they would want to search and somehow that took something from them. Where I think, our generation and lower seems to be more like, yeah, there's room for everybody. I can love two kids. Certainly I can love two different people. I can have 15 cousins and love them all. Certainly, we can continue to include people in the family, whether it's through adoption or marriage or, whatever the case may be. And I think that's a really important thing to kind of continue, is that now there are way more open adoptions than closed. But I think continuing the idea that it's not one or the other. It doesn't
Right.
always have. Now there are circumstances where it wouldn't be safe, et cetera, or whatever. But overall, I think that openness towards different types of families and different types of building your family and different people, it's okay, is a wonderful message. And I think it's so much better for the kids who are adopted to be able to say I'm adopted without being ashamed of it, to be able to know about their birth parents, who they are.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes controversial, sometimes not possible. But I think in a case like this, where it's just turning out so beautifully, I can't imagine a better way, because she'll never not have that knowledge that Sherri and I always wanted. How
Yeah.
do I fit in? Where am I from? What is, what are my birth parents like? Do I have any siblings?
Yeah.
All the gazillion questions that you wonder and you ask, and you think you may or may, for us, we never thought we'd really get answers to.
Yes.
It amazes me that this new upcoming generation, that's really not much of a question for most of them.
Right.
Um, and I just think it's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing you've done with your family, to
Well,
be able
thank
to
you.
open your family to her birth family and just become one big family is
Mhm.
beautiful.
Yeah, in the one, I think it's in Chasing Charlie, you see the families together around the table and her blowing up birthday candles, I think. I mean, that was real. That was as real as it got.
I
Sometimes you see them, they're sneaking into the dining room, just sitting by each other, Adrian and her. I mean, it's beautiful. We are going to try to see in the next year if we can fly down to North Carolina, because now the kids are, gosh, Charlie's 13 and a half. Adrian, I think, is 15. So,
Well, both your books are available on Amazon and through
yep.
bookstores around the country, correct? By
Yes.
order?
Yes.
And
And
I
we'll
think
put the
anybody
link in
in
the
those,
bio.
yeah, we'll
Yes.
put
Okay.
the links down in the bio.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
we certainly appreciate you being here with us. Tell us your story and Charlie's story and how things have gone for you, the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, and what parents who are looking to do this will hopefully benefit from this. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yes, it was.
Thanks.
Thank you.